Hey team, and welcome to another video in our Astrological Magical Elections video series. Today we are going to talk about those magical electional opportunities that we'll have from our Scorpio Lunar Eclipse on May 15th until our Gemini New Moon on May 30th. So this is an eclipse lunation and kind of generally my no eclipse magic rule slash suggestion slash hard suggestion stays in place, typically using magic that invokes or incorporates the moon or the sun while they are eclipsed is a bad idea. And so we're going to maintain that stance on this channel from now until the end of time. But it's always good to bring up to remind people that some of the ideas, the more modern magical ideas around eclipses are a little bit dangerous. So definitely recommend staying away from them as much as possible. Today, I am joined by no cats, which I also feel is an eclipse omen. Like, that's never a good thing, right? But it's fine. It's fine. It just recently got done storming, and some of the cats are afraid of storms, and they hide under the couch in the living room. And other cats don't mind the storms, but they kind of have their own little, like, rain places that they go to sleep and kind of watch the rain. And that's kind of where they are still now. So nobody has made it into my office. The cat bed, she is empty. And Bubbles, I don't know where Bubbles is right now. Probably on the stairs. She likes to sleep on the stairs. She's weird. She wants us to trip over her and, get the insurance money, I guess. But even though this is an eclipse, that doesn't necessarily mean that there are no electional opportunities that we can take advantage of during this 2-week period from our full moon until our new moon. On the contrary, there are a few really good opportunities around the world that we can utilize. Remember, during our waning moon phases, we are specifically working with energies that are meant to diminish and reduce and decline. So we're really trying to focus in on magical purposes or intentions that fit within that greater lunar theme, especially when we're working with lunar mansions, which is primarily what we work with here on this channel because they're very easy and accessible to work with, unlike planets, which require a lot more, we'll say, long-term planning and luck. There are a lot of overlap for the opportunities that we're going to talk about in this video for Australia, North America, and Western Europe and North Africa. So instead of doing it kind of our typical three video sections that cover the different locations, because they are so similar, we're just going to do it all as one and talk about the differences in the charts and the locations themselves. So everybody buckle in and let's see what elections we have coming up for us. Update. I went to go get a drink and now there are cats. So, and Lee here is the biggest baby when it comes to storms. Well, second biggest baby, Ty's bigger. So if he's out, then the rain must be safely passed. So everybody say hello to Lee. Look at the camera. What's wrong with you? Look at the camera. Look at your fans. Look at your camera. He says stop. He says stop picking me up like this. He'll be around. May 18th. Chin scritches. All right, so our second electional opportunity for this 2-week period is actually going to be for North America and Australia. Western Europe is going to have to sit this one out. And this is going to be an opportunity for the 22nd Lunar Mansion. Now, the 22nd Lunar Mansion is, when we're talking about waning phases, is one that is more incorporated or associated with like freedom and escape. And so it's really that sort of energy that we're working with when we're talking about the 22nd Mansion, especially in waning. We're talking about like escape from things. So the 22nd Mansion can be really helpful for any sort of situation that we're trying to get away from, to put space between us, anything like that. So if you're trying to escape, anything that you feel is holding you back, this is really kind of open-ended to some extent for whatever kind of works best for your situation. So like if you're trying to escape, a difficult job, a difficult relationship, a difficult home environment, things like that, the 22nd Lunar Mansion can help you with. But even things like, escaping from bad habits, and things like that are things that the 22nd Lunar Mansion can also help for. So it's very flexible, very open-ended, which I think makes a really great mansion. I really appreciate the mansions that are a little bit more flexible and open-ended, just because it allows you to be able to use them in kind of different creative ways when we need them. So taking a look at our election chart here, For North America, this chart takes place on May 18th at just before 11:30 at night. This chart is set for 2327. And as you can see in our election, we have the moon on the ascendant in the 22nd lunar mansion. And at this time, she's applying a square to Venus. And this is fine. When it comes to the 22nd lunar mansion, I actually really prefer the applications to benefic planets over the malefic planets, because I think the 22nd lunar mansion is sort of like one of the more waxing oriented of the mansions that can be utilized for a waning mansion purpose. So what I mean by that is, because the 22nd lunar mansion is more about like freedom and escape. Well, obviously you want to like escape and be free into safety, right? Like that makes sense. And so because of that, I really recommend applications to benefic planets, even if they are through more difficult aspects like squares. I would never go opposition, but a square, my cat Lee is like laying all over my notes, so I don't even know what I was saying anymore. I wouldn't work with the opposition, but squares can be fine. So this is what makes the 22nd lunar mansion, I think, a little bit unique when it comes to the mansions that we would consider in waning moon phases. I typically always want to work with aspects to benefics with this mansion, because the going to somewhere safe, the moving to a better position, is more important to me. And we want to be able to do that safely and effectively in a way that the malefic planets maybe can't get us. And I just want to point, I don't know if you can see this, but like there's a cloud of cat hair in front of me. And I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but that's all I see is just Lee's cat hair everywhere. So just like in any normal election, we want to make sure that the moon is well placed and unafflicted, and she is free from the squares of Mars or Saturn, and she's free from combustion. Everything's fine. At the same time, we want to make sure that Saturn is doing well, because he's the ruler of the first house, as Capricorn is on the ascendant. Saturn's down here in Aquarius, not conjoined or afflicted by Mars, not retrograde, not afflicted by the sun, not combust or anything like that. So all in all, everything's pretty good. So Western Europe does not have a 22nd lunar mansion talisman, but Australia does, and theirs is going to be for May 19th at just around 4 in the afternoon at 16:01. And here in this chart, we're going to have the moon at kind of the very end of the 22nd lunar mansion here, in the third house, her house of joy, and an acceptable house to have her in. And at this time, she's also applying that square to Venus, so we can have that similar theme, a benefic planet that helps us to ensure a little bit more, freedom and safety in wherever we end up wanting to go. The ruler of the first house in this chart is Mars here in Pisces, conjoined Jupiter, which I think is a nice touch here. And kind of at the same time while this is happening, the moon is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. Mars is unafflicted by Saturn, not afflicted by the sun, and even the ascendant degree is safe. I don't think the nodes in the first house are a big deal. And the ascendant degree is far enough to not have to worry about the square of Saturn, which would be a major no-no in a chart like this, I think. So all in all, just again, another kind of... Okay, I was trying to see why I didn't recommend the chart with the moon on the midheaven. That seemed like it could also be an idea as I was looking at it. And I'm seeing now why, because it seems very not appropriate to have the ruler of the first house in the 12th house in a chart or in a talisman that's about freedom and escape. I'm not super comfortable with that. I'm not really comfortable with the lord of the first house in the 12th house, regardless of any sort of intention with the talisman. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good plan. So that was why this didn't work out. Let me see. And then the other issue would be if you went even further back, we're like, okay, well, how about Pisces rising? Because then I can have Jupiter as the ruler of the first house in the first house, and like that's cool. But then you would have Mars conjoin the ascendant, and I don't want malefics conjoin the ascendant. So that's why there wasn't anything like that. And then if we go back too far, the moon's not in the 22nd lunar mansion anymore because it begins at 0 degrees Capricorn. So we couldn't have one on the ascendant. Let me see. If we did one in the 12th, or I'm sorry, in the 11th house, we could get a square to Jupiter if that's preferred. So if this is more your speed, this chart is May 18th at 23:34 for Australia. You have Saturn as a ruler of the first house in the first house. The moon applies to Jupiter in the second house. I would say this could be an alternative if you are uncomfortable with or unable to make the earlier time, or I guess technically the later time, the time I showed earlier, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're a night owl and up at 12 or at 11:30 and think you can pop this one out, here you go. But either this one or the one I showed earlier at around the 4 o'clock time would be good. So our next electional opportunity is one that everyone should be able to enjoy, and this is an opportunity for a 23rd Lunar Mansion talisman. The 23rd Lunar Mansion is called the Luck of the Swallower, and it's a mansion that is very much about like devouring, digesting, swallowing things. And so this is especially one that's important to utilize in the waning moon phase whenever we have an opportunity to do that. The 23rd Lunar Mansion has a lot of good applications. It can be used to like sacrifice things to help get rid of things. It has a healing component in that it is used to like swallow pain, swallow illness. So it's sort of like our waning moon healing talisman, which is a little bit unusual. I don't tend to really like to lean into healing talismans during the waning moon phase because I would much rather increase health than I would to decrease disease, kind of a thing. And that's just kind of like a personal preference. I think is a little bit more on the side of safety than kind of typical. But the 23rd Lunar Mansion is basically all about this. It's all about taking things that are in excess or are debilitating and consuming them, getting rid of them, offering them up to something else. So the 23rd Lunar Mansion is really awesome in this regard. It's sort of like the slightly more aggressive 23rd Lunar Mansion, 22nd Lunar Mansion is slightly more aggressive than that one, the one we just covered. So for this one, I don't mind applications to malefic planets because I think it's very in character for this one, and that's basically what we have going on here. So if you are an individual who is looking to get rid of something in your life, or you suffer a lot from like chronic pain, chronic illness, especially one that has flare-ups, the 23rd Lunar Mansion is a really great mansion that I would point you to as an option to help kind of manage that. So taking a look at our election for the North American continent, this one takes place on May 20th at just after midnight, about 19 minutes after midnight. And here we have the moon in the 23rd, I keep forgetting what mansion I'm talking about, in the 23rd Lunar Mansion, and she's applying this sextile to Mars in Pisces. And like I said, I would much rather have, but I'm much more agreeable to And like I said, I'm much more agreeable or open to aspects to malefic planets in the 23rd Lunar Mansion, whereas I'm much more about it in the 22nd Lunar Mansion. And so having this kind of malefic is good. I think especially with like a Mars, I think it's very appropriate because Mars is all about consuming, all about burning things up, all about kind of reducing things to ash kind of a thing, feeding things to the fire so that we no longer have to deal with them. That's kind of the Mars thing. That's very similar also to the nature of the 22nd mansion. I'm sorry, the 23rd mansion. Why do I keep saying it? So Mars contact is definitely really great here. Very appropriate. I like it a lot. The moon is unafflicted by Saturn, unafflicted by the sun. There's nothing really to worry about there. The ascendant degree as well. The ascendant is in Capricorn, so it's ruled by this Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn's also free of any sort of impediments that we have to worry about. So all in all, a really great talisman. I would definitely recommend grabbing it. Like I said, the 23rd mansion is a little bit unique in that it is an obviously waning moon healing talisman. So it can be a really great opportunity to have. Because it's a little bit easier to plan for, in my experience, than some of the more waxing moon talismans that are about healing. The Australian version of the 23rd Lunar Mansion is very much the same. Of course, the moon degree is different just because that's how it works when Australia, their moon is off. Just kidding, it's just how time works. The moon is in the 23rd Lunar Mansion here, conjoined the ascendant, which is really nice. And at this time, she applies the square to Venus. So we have a different planetary contact here. The first one, we had the Mars sextile. Here we have the Venus square. Both, I think, are good. Both, I think, are fine. The benefic energy here is probably a little bit less agreeable because the 23rd Lunar Mansion is obviously a bit more malefic in that it consumes, it eats, it destroys. But of course, we'll have that tempered somewhat by this Venus benefic talisman, who, as a benefic planet, Venus wants to supply health. She wants to reduce illness. She wants to reduce pain. So all in all, we still have a kind of two different avenues of getting to the same result. So I think it works out very well in charts like this. And just like in our North American version, the moon is free of afflictions from the malefic planets. Saturn rules the first house and down here in Aquarius, and he is free from afflictions. No worry about Mars, not close enough to the sun to worry about combustion. It's just a kind of your standard all lights are green, all systems go kind of electional chart here. Not a lot to really say other than the moon's contact is good. Saturn and the moon are doing fine, so go for it. Oh, but we'll actually come back to this chart for Australia again, so hold that thought. And then finally, the Western European version of this chart takes place on May 20th at around 1:15 in the morning. Very, very, very similar setup. They're basically all the same charts here, with the moon in the ascendant in the 23rd lunar mansion. The only difference is the planetary aspect. North America and Western Europe get to have the sextile to Mars, and in Australia, I forgot where the place was. In Australia, it's the square to Venus. So a little bit of a different energy there. The connection to Mars here leans a little bit more into the malefic consuming energy of the 23rd lunar mansion, which I imagine can make it a little bit more effective on like a time scale, like on a time frame kind of scale, to be able to combat more aggressive or long-standing pains or illnesses, whereas Venus is a little bit like slower going, more even-keeled kind of an energy. But other than that, I don't think there's really that huge of a difference between these electional charts regardless of the location. They all have the moon, in the mansion. She's safe from afflictions. The ruler of the first house is always Saturn, who is also safe from affliction, strong in his sign, usually in the first house. It's just kind of your standard. I wouldn't worry about the nodes or anything else like that looks scary. Just a good election chart. So make sure to use it if you are in any need of some sort of relief from an illness, or just trying to get rid of something that's kind of plaguing you. Fears, anxieties, sacrifice those to it. So our next electional chart is actually for kind of around the same time. It's only going to be available for North America and Australia, so I'm sorry, Western Europe, North Africa, you're going to kind of miss this one. And this is going to be an opportunity for a Vega fixed star talisman. Vega is a really neat fixed star that is said to provide very effective spiritual protection. So Vega is a star that specifically helps protect from like malefic attachments, from nightmares, from night phantoms, for sleep paralysis, any sort of like nighttime, more negative spiritual entity or experience. Vega is very useful for chasing away and keeping an individual safe from. Vega is also very useful as a star to incorporate in rituals or tools that are utilized for like purification or exorcism. Vega, 10 out of 10 would recommend Vega talismans for anybody who is involved in kind of like any level of spiritual work, of magical workings, just because you need to also keep up with spiritual hygiene and spiritual protection in that regard, which is something that Vega is very, very useful for. So if that sounds interesting for you, or to you, and you live in Australia and North America, here we go. It's go time. So our North American version of this chart takes place on May 18th at just before midnight at 23:47 is what this chart is set for. And what you're looking for Vega's degree, which is at 15 degrees of Capricorn, to be on the ascendant, and the moon to be applying the conjunction to that degree. At the same time, we want the moon to apply to a planet who's of the nature of Vega, so our options are either Venus or Mercury. And that's exactly what we get with Venus applying this square to Venus, down here in the third house. So all of our boxes are checked. Everything that we typically look for a fixed star talisman is present. Do you like how Lee just looks like statuesque back there in the background? That's pretty cool. And then our question becomes, okay, so we have everything that we do need, that we are normally looking for. Do we also not have anything that we would not want to have incorporated in this election? And I think we do. The moon is free from the afflictions of Saturn or Mars. We don't have to worry about the sun being involved. The degree of the ascendant is also not square or opposite Mars or Saturn. The ruler of the first house is Saturn here in Aquarius in the second. Unafflicted by Mars, not combust the sun. So all of our kind of safety checks check out with this. So definitely recommend grabbing this Vega talisman if you are at all interested in anything Vega related. It's a super awesome talisman to have. Super recommend it. I recommend a lot of talismans, I think, but Vega's a good one. Recommend it if you're interested in it at all. Good opportunity. The Australian version of this chart is the exact same one that was offered as the 23rd Lunar Mansion talisman on May 19th at just before 8:30 at night. 2022 is what this chart is set for. Again, very same thing. You want the star Vega to be on the ascendant, which is at 15 degrees of Capricorn. So you put that degree on the ascendant, and then you get the moon applying to the conjunction of that degree. At the same time, you want the moon to apply to either Venus or Mercury, planets that are said to share in the nature of Vega, and we get that in this with that square to Venus. So all of our boxes are checked to what we normally look for fixed star talismans. Then it just becomes that same process, making sure there aren't any afflictions or anything to worry about in the chart, and we don't have that here. The moon and the ascendant degree, they're both very close together, are free from the afflictions of Mars or Saturn. Saturn is the ruler of the first house since Capricorn rises, and Saturn is free from afflictions of Mars. Not worrying about afflictions for the Sun at this time. The square is more of an issue for the Sun than it is for Saturn. So like I said, just a good election, just a really good election. The Australian chart I think is much better than the North American chart, just because the moon conjunction is closer, and I think that's cool. But they're both really good elections. I definitely recommend checking them out. Recommend grabbing them if you're interested in them at all. So our final electional opportunity is another universal one. Everybody from North America, Western Europe, and Australia and North Africa should be able to make this one. This is going to be an opportunity for a fourth Lunar Mansion talisman, and I'm just excited imagining the looks on your faces as you look at this election that's here before I've even talked about it. But the fourth Lunar Mansion is an extremely negative, overpowering mansion in most cases. It primarily has to do with the creation of anger, the generation of wrath, but also can be utilized for pest control, which is what we're going with here. So we utilize the fourth Lunar Mansion in waning moon charts to reduce pests, to afflict pests, to drive them away from locations, and that's what we're tapped into here. These charts, these more pest control charts, look a little bit different. The rules are kind of backwards from what we normally look for, where we want things to be safe and calm and productive and even. We don't want that for pest control charts. We want them to be chaotic and dangerous and frightful. And that's really the energy that we're leaning into here. So the fourth Lunar Mansion, like I said, is good primarily for pest control. And when we're talking about pest control talismans, we want to mess things up. And that's what we get to do with this. So the North American version of this chart takes place on May 28th at just after 5 in the morning at 5:06. And this chart features the moon in the fourth Lunar Mansion conjoined the ascendant as she's applying the conjunction to the node, which is awesome. And also the square to Saturn, which is awesome. At the same time, Venus, the ruler of the first house, is in the 12th house, which is awesome. And yeah, it's just like a terrible chart, which is exactly what you want for pest controls. So when you create this talisman, you are kind of imbibing it with that chaotic, destructive, discombobulating energy that is then directed towards the pests that you're currently fighting. Generally, the ruler, the sign of the ascendant, has something to say about like what pest it would be best suited for. With Taurus on the ascendant, it would be more like Taurus type creatures, things like livestock, which probably isn't exactly what many of us are being pestered by, right? Like who's like, oh, cows in my yard. Maybe that happens, but not to me. So this is one of those talismans that would be more specifically indicated for like Taurus type pests, but it can be used universally for any type pests or for a Taurus who is a pest to you, potentially. Knock yourself out with that one, but don't tell them I told you that you can do that. All in all, it's a very just like chaotic, destructive. The moon's not doing very well. The ascendant degree is not doing very well. The ruler of the ascendant is in a house of imprisonment and confinement. So it's just not a great chart for that, for things, but it's good to drive things away, which might be what you need. Maybe you're dealing with that. It's summer here in the North America and all the pests are coming out to play. But taking a look at our fourth Lunar Mansion chart in the Western European and North African version of it, it's mostly the same, but a little bit different in that our ascendant sign has shifted. We've gone from the moon in the ascendant to the moon in the 10th house. So we have the moon in the fourth Lunar Mansion. Up here in the midheaven, she's still applying to the conjoin this node. She's still applying to the square of Saturn, even though it's a little bit further out in this chart now. But we do also have a really nice, I'm going to use the word nice, opposition with Saturn in the ascendant, even though the Sun as the ruler of the first house is relatively safe in this chart, which is a little bit less ideal for this sort of pest control kind of aspect that we're trying to bring to this. Kind of like I said in the previous chart, the Sun on the ascendant can kind of dictate or kind of specify, maybe is a better word, what types of pests are best repulsed by the talisman itself. In the North American version, we had Taurus on the ascendant, which pointed more to like livestock, things like that. With Leo on the ascendant, it points more to like wild animals kind of a thing, lions, tigers, bears, oh my. But even like less aggressive or carnivorous, we'll say, wild animals would be caught under this too. Of course, it doesn't mean that this is only specific, that this can only be used for repealing or repelling those kinds of pests. That's not the case. It's just specifically like really good for that. It can also be used more generally for pests. So try not to get too focused on it. But if you are somebody who like struggles with bears or something, then this is it. This is for you. This is what you need. And then finally, the Australian version of the fourth lunar mansion chart is much more similar to the North American chart than it is to the Western European or North African charts. Here we have Taurus back on the ascendant again. The moon in the fourth mansion can join the node, and applying to that square to Saturn. Venus is back again as the ruler of the first house and the 12th house. Just kind of a nasty chart, just kind of a really nasty chart. Again, the Taurus more about like the livestock more specifically, but can be used for pests generally. So try not to get too focused on it. Usually for a chart like this, we would want like, maybe not want, but we would probably more prefer like Scorpio on the ascendant. Because Scorpio is, of course, more about bugs, insects, things like that. But, we're going to do that. We can do that same thing. Taurus is just a little less good at it than Scorpio is. But all in all, very solid kind of pest control, repulsing kind of talisman. Definitely recommended if you are, struggling with any sort of like pest invasion or infestation or anything like that. It'll help you make some headway in getting that cleared out. But alrighty, everybody, thank you guys so much for joining me today for this journey through the magical electional opportunities between our Scorpio lunar eclipse and our Gemini new moon. I want to say a special thank you again to all of my patrons for all their support and kindness that they've offered. If you're interested in joining the Patreon to support the channel, be sure to take a look at that in the description to get access to all those extras that patrons get. Alternatively, or in conjunction with, be sure to check out the description below to get a link to the sign-up form for my newsletter. There, I've had it for a while, and I normally use it to talk about updates to the site, new articles, and kind of share general thoughts on astrology as it kind of happens. So make sure to check that out if you're interested in engaging with content that way. And then everybody take care, be easy on yourselves and others during the eclipse. And then I'll see you all again on the Gemini New Moon.